This is one of those videos that I hate to have to do. I wish that every guy that ever worked with a girl and was helping her learn to shoot with any woman at all um, had enough common sense, but it just doesn't seem to be that way. And again, I'm not ragging. Most of the gun guys I know actually find this to be one of their personal pet peeves as well. So there's many of us in the same camp. And if I'm preaching to the choir, hey, share this video to others who maybe don't understand what they're doing. Um, I was in a gun store recently. I opened carrying that gun store. The owner loves it. When he and anybody who's working behind the counter are busy with other people, he knows me, he knows my background, and he knows that I'm a sheepdog. I'm watching and looking around for trouble, making sure that there's no problem. So as I'm standing there, just, drooling on the case, looking at various firearms, this lady walks up, and there's nobody that can immediately help her. And so she begins talking to me, and um, she said, my husband bought me a gun recently, and she said it's big, really big, and she said it's really heavy and it hurts me to shoot it. And I said, well, did he get it for home defense only, or are you supposed to carry it with you? Are you supposed to get a concealed carry permit? And she said, no, it's only for home defense. And they live in a little rural community near where I live, and it's kind of a little bedroom community, sleepy little town, and not a lot of bad stuff happens there. And she says, the other day we had a home invasion, and I'm like, oh my gosh, you're kidding me. And she said, no. She said, in the evening about dinner time, this guy comes charging in the front door, and he's through the storm door and partway in by the time she gets to him. She said, I went right by the handgun, and I'm remiss for not telling you what this handgun was. I asked her, I said, well, do you see this handgun in the case or anything like it? And she goes over to the case full of 357 Magnums with a smattering of 44 Magnums, and she's showing me these large caliber revolvers, and I immediately knew what had happened. Her husband didn't buy her a gun, and that's what I told her in a moment. I said he bought him a gun for her to use for home defense. And I can't tell you how many times I have talked to women. I've got a good friend that does this, and he insists that his family has to shoot 45s. The women in his family has to shoot 45 ACP. They're little bitty women, or 357 Magnum. Oh my gosh, come on. And so here's why this to me is so dangerous. She said she went right by where the 357 Magnum was, fully knowing it was loaded and ready for her to use, because she was more afraid of what the gun would do to her hand, because it hurt her so much to shoot it, than she was the guy coming in the door. Now think about that. Most of us would be like, man, I'd suck it up and fire a howitzer if I had to. But women are psychologically wired different, and if you don't know that, you're not paying attention. And secondly, women on their as a frame, they're just typically built very much different than the average guy. There's a few women out there that can handle very large caliber handguns and do so very well, and I tip my hat to them. Most women can't. She runs by this guy, or by the handgun rather, to this guy, and as he's halfway in the door, she begins slamming the inside door against him, where he's like partway in the door frame. You know what, lady? Great way to use what's around you as a weapon. Congratulations. Her 12-year-old son runs around the corner with a baseball bat and begins jamming it endwise through the door and hitting the guy with it. You know what? You guys make a heck of a wrestling tag team. That's awesome. But she had a weapon there that could have and should have been her first line of defense, and it wasn't, because psychologically she was more afraid of it than she was the guy. And so I began to talk to her and made sure that she wasn't anti-gun, made sure that she hadn't had any really bad handgun experiences or firearms experiences in her life. She had fired other guns. She had fired other handguns, and she said, they don't all hurt me like that one. And then I began to explain to her what had really happened, that her husband had bought him a handgun. And I said, ma'am, I love 357s and I love 44s and I love the feel, but I'm over 200 pounds and 6'4". I mean, I'm not a little guy, and I do like that recoil. My wife does not. My wife's 5'1". She weighs half what I weigh. And I said, the thing is, you really need a handgun that's more down in this range. And I began to show her smaller caliber handguns. And so I began to talk to her. Now, this is not the end-all be-all list. This is not even my favorite list of handguns. This is just what I found out with a few moments search on the internet. But there are 9s and there are 38s and 380s and so forth that can be an excellent line of defense for a lady. Now, I'm not here to start the caliber wars over. I've got scars from that, and I got so sick of the stupid caliber wars. But if you think the only way to defend your home and hand your little bitty wife is a firearm that has a 357 Magnum round in it, or a 45 ACP, some kind of a hot load on that or whatever. Come on. And so I began to talk to her about some of these things. I recommended a gun range to her. This is an indoor gun range close to where she lives, and they let you rent handguns, and they work with women to help them find the gun that fits them. Now, I'm a personal believer in two things. One is, I want a lady to shoot the largest caliber she's comfortable with for her needs, whether it's concealed carry or whether it's for home defense or it's for defense in the car, whatever that's going to be the proverbial nightstand gun or not. So once I know what the weapon's for, then I want to step them up. And if they've never shot, let's start them out with a 22, and let's work them up so they realize you don't just hand a woman a 44 Magnum or a 45 ACP or a 357 Magnum and then laugh. I would love to force choke the guys that do that. Think about that for a second. I mean, most guys already understand what I'm talking about, but if you're one of those guys, shame on you. Think about it for a second. You're handing a woman a weapon that is way too much weapon for her, and especially if she has no background with firearms, what did you immediately just do? That's no different than taking a person out to a horse that they've never ridden a horse before, putting him on the back of the horse that's known to buck people off, and slapping the horse on the rump so it bucks the person off. That is no different. What did you just do? If the person's not used to riding, do you think they ever want to climb in the saddle again? Probably not. And I get a little passionate about that. It eats my lunch. And so as I began to talk to her about this, I told her how I would teach her. And again, I'm not an instructor, but I've worked with quite a few instructors, and many of them agree with me on this, that you start them off with a small caliber. You work them up through the 22, you work them up to a 380, you work them up to like a 9 or a 38, and a lot of ladies land somewhere in that range. Now, I've had women just totally surprise me and land with a 40. I've had 3 women do that. They really liked shooting a 40. Now, ironically, I'm sitting here on the shield. That's what the women actually shot that they liked. This is a 9, but they shot the 40 and liked it. A lot of ladies loved the 380. My wife loves the 380. And again, I'm not trying to start the caliber wars. There's some basic logic here when it comes to defending your home. And this is what I tried to relate to this lady is, unlike the movies, shooting someone with a handgun is rarely a one and done. Now, there might be a psychological stop where you shoot the person one time with the handgun and they run away, or you fire and miss them and they're like, oh, and they run away. That's a psychological stop. There are many times where you pull the gun and it's a psychological stop. They're like, well, crap, I didn't want to get shot, and they run away. But then again, there are people who will charge you no matter what. There are people that have an amazing ability to absorb lead. There's that guy last year, the officer that shot a gang member 14 times with a 45 ACP, and the guy was still fighting back, and he was not high, by the way. He just had an incredible ability to absorb lead, including, as I recall, 2 in the forehead, 1 in the lung, and 1 in the pelvic girdle specifically. There are people that can absorb a lot of lead. So when I was talking to this lady, the way I related it to her was, I said, this is gross, this is grisly, and I've used this with quite a few people, but you want to shoot them enough times that they stop coming at you, and ideally you want them to bleed out enough blood that they pass out. That's about 20% of your blood, and they hit the ground, because as likely as not, one shot is not going to be one kill with a handgun. Even with a 45 ACP, perish the thought, it's not going to be the end all be all. And even with a 357 Magnum, I mean, you might, but it's probably not going to happen. And so this lady, I was able to help her and get her steered towards something that was going to fit her better. My wife can take a little 380 that I've got for her, and she understands. She shoots 38s for home defense, and then for a carry gun, the one that I got her is a Ruger LCP with the Crimson Trace laser in a 380, and that woman can stand 35 feet from a pop can with a 380 with that little bitty barrel, and she can blow up those pop cans every time. She's comfortable with her gun, and that's sexy, by the way. She's comfortable with her gun. She's a good shot with her gun, and a confident woman behind a gun she can trust that she knows is not going to hurt her is a formidable opponent. Hoorah! That is what you want to see, is a woman who's comfortable behind her gun. And on the subject of sexy and hot, I don't know how many guys I've talked to that put calendars up on their walls of gun girls and these women who really know how to shoot, and they get out there. And I mean, Tactizzy has, thousands and thousands of fans because she's not ugly, and at the same time she knows how to shoot. But these same guys that think that's so hot take their wife or girlfriend out and hand her too much of a weapon, and then think it's funny when she misses. Oh, shame on you! Don't ever do that to a woman that's new to shooting, and make fun of her for missing. What is wrong with you? And then secondly, hand her too much weapon and it pops her in the forehead, or the recoil is just unbelievable, and the report, even with the hearing protection on, is massive. Why would you do that? Again, there's no difference than putting that person on a horse named Bullet or Man Killer and then slapping the rump. So that's my 2 cents. If you're going to go out there and help people, think about it. Try to get them the weapon that's right for them, especially for ladies. And secondly, if you're already in my camp, share this video, and maybe we can help some of these redneck guys out there that may mean well but just aren't thinking to get the right weapon for the lady in their life. You have a great day.